Hello there, hi, welcome to Butterfly Effect, a podcast all about interviewing people. I'm your host, Tristan Ettleman. Hope things are well with you. It's been a while, nearly 2 months, but the show is back with a great guest. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but in the meantime, it's been a long fucking week for people that are sane and don't want to see this country ripped to shit by bad things. So it's by the time it's posted, it'll be a week since Donald Trump was elected president, and that's making me sad and scared for all my non-white male friends and family. It really is like affecting me, which is good and bad. It's good that I'm connected, bad that I feel bad. So there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of sadness. I felt I'm kind of getting tired, but I think I'll have a second wind, and hopefully it'll carry me through the next 4 years. But I'm sure you don't want to hear about politics. You've probably been hearing about it all the time, even though this is probably the most important time to hear it. Anyways, so we're back finally. This week I talked to Andrew Neel, filmmaker, director, writer, and so here's the thing with the episode. It was a great conversation. Andrew Neel, really cool guy, learned a lot, but we had some issues, some technical issues for the first time, but it was enough. It wasn't enough, I should say, to not post something. So basically, there was a lot of static that would rendered the conversation inaudible, and not much playing around could really fix it to a degree. But then we figured it out and got it to you hear some kind of popping in the background the whole time, and then that would have been fine, but also there was some weird kind of syncing issue with the recording of the conversation. I do them over Skype, and so what basically would happen is I would talk in my conversation, my part of my recording would go into when he was responding, if that makes sense. He was responding to something that I hadn't even finished saying yet in terms of the context of the recording, and it was recorded in mixed stereo, so there's no way I could have widened those gaps and made that work. And so that's part of the issue with the Skype recorder that I use, and there might be an option that I had fixed with before, but I just recently got a new computer and had to reinstall it and stuff. So there's a whole bunch of issues. So basically, what it sounds like is that it keeps sounding like he will cut me off, or I keep talking while he's responding, and that's not natural. That's not what actually happened. That we respectfully listen to each other and stuff. So there's a couple of instances where it sounds like that, but usually my audio is quieter, so you don't really notice it as much. It's a whole hullabaloo. And by the second half of the conversation, we were talking back and forth so much that it was really just it was kind of made no sense. So basically, what I did was I cut the conversation in half. We just had the first half of our conversation. We didn't delve deeper into his whole timeline of his career, which is too bad because it's really interesting. So it's a shorter episode, and it's one that might not feel as complete. But he had a lot of profound and really interesting things to say in that first half, specifically about his new film Goat and filmmaking in general. And I didn't want to let this episode just go into nothing. So, yeah, that's what we got. It's a good conversation regardless. And you can learn and read about Andrew's work elsewhere, and maybe we can have him back on sometime in the future, and we can retread that ground when it's not so fresh and we're not like I know personally I would like try to recreate the conversation, which isn't natural. So maybe at some point we can have him back to talk about some new project that he's got, and we can go back into that material. I would love to do that because he's got a lot of great, really smart things to say, and he's saying them on this podcast, and he's saying them with his films. So with all that being said, please try to enjoy this conversation. There might be a little few inconsistencies, and that popping is kind of there. But I wouldn't post this if I didn't think that it wasn't worth it. So without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Andrew Neel. I guess main thing, how's reception to GOAT stuff going for you?
It's great. I mean, it couldn't have gone better, really, for me. I mean, it's obviously, it was a big stepping stone in my career.
Yeah.
In terms of just, and I got, like, I think the critical response was really what I thought it would be. I knew there would be like a mixture of responses, but like overwhelmingly I did really well critically, so that's cool. And it's great. It was a grueling film to make. It was interesting, but it was grueling, and one can only hope that people take something away from it and ask questions. And for me, the most important thing, you make a movie is that people leave thinking about it.
Sure.
I think I generally make films from the top down. And what I mean by that is, I make a film about an idea that I'm investigating. And in a lot of ways, sometimes the story serves that idea in some ways. So I feel like people really left the movie, I feel like it just started a dialogue about masculinity and men today, and obviously fraternities as well, so that's good.
Yeah. There's something interesting. I feel like people use the word indictment for your work a lot because you've kind of tackled some big stuff, but I don't know if that's necessarily, was that your angle for it?
Yeah, no, I mean, if someone reads indictment in it, that's okay. I mean, I think by its very nature, this Bradland story, I think there's an inherent indictment of a certain kind of behavior in fraternities, but I try not to take a limited polemic. I try not to make polemic, and I try not to really limit my point of view in most of the films I make. So that being said, how someone reads it and interprets it, that's up to them, and perhaps they saw this as an indictment of fraternity culture, and if they did, that certainly would make a lot of sense. I mean, the behavior that you see in the film is pretty atrocious. So.
Right. Yeah, I go to ASU, which is a big, fraternity culture here, and so I'm definitely not invested in it at all. But just from the outside, knowing that this could be or is likely happening, in multiple schools across the country. It's not like I didn't know about it before watching the film, but put to screen like that, it hits you a little bit harder. Just it's kind of sad.
I think young men, there's really a decreasing number of opportunities to interact with the world in a visceral way, and I think young men at a certain point, hormonally speaking, and biologically speaking, really are searching for some amount of tactile, sexual, life-affirming experiences to define themselves as they enter manhood. And fraternities are one way that society has dealt with that. And
yeah, it's personal today too, in a world that's not necessarily always that.
What do you
way.
mean?
Well, I mean, there's so many communities being built, digitally, or and it's there.
I think we're yearning to somehow prove that we're here and that we exist and that we're that we're human beings that have an effect on things around us. And these violent, brutish parts of whether it's fraternity hazing or organized sports or any other organizations like that where you see a lot of hazing, I think it's an opportunity to try to satisfy that part of male biology. I mean, I think that just because something's part of our genetic makeup doesn't necessarily mean it's good, and yet I understand why young men search for that on some level. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a great film. I enjoyed it, and I feel like you kind of alluded to this. It feels like it's kind of a. Do you feel like it's kind of a breakthrough for your career?
I think,
for the attention.
My career's a little odd in a lot of ways. I think it's been a series of small steps, and it's not like I was just a first-time director who walked out and went to Sundance. I'd made a lot of documentaries and had been in and out of the business in various ways before Goat was made, and so like when I guess when I got to Sundance this year, it wasn't, I've been through it a number of times before, not Sundance, but South by Southwest and Berlin and other festivals, and
sure.
and I think I knew what to expect, personally, on a private level and on a public level. Obviously, the movie had a higher profile than any other film I've made, which always changes your career simply because you're a known quantity or a better known quantity. But my first film, Darkon, won South by Southwest in 2006, and it was optioned by Plan B, and it was going to be right. He wrote the initial script, and
right?
So that's really what got me and my company into the business. We got an agent through that, and we continued to make documentaries. And so I didn't even really start motivating myself towards fiction until I don't know, maybe 6 years ago or so, and then tried to make the sometimes difficult transition from documentary into fiction. So I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I feel like unlike a lot of directors who come to Sundance with their first film, it's kind of you go from zero, into the business in a matter of 2 weeks. That wasn't really the case for me. Like I had a manager and I had representation, in agency, and I had a number of films that were set up with stars before this that didn't end up going, and so I don't know. I slowly stepped into the place that I am now, which that's a hard path in a lot of ways because you don't get the instant satisfaction of going big on the first film, but I think in a lot of ways it's a much more organic way of becoming who you are as a filmmaker. I'm not saying it's wrong or anything, but you weave your way through not only the business but also your creative inclinations. And I think for any artist or writer or filmmaker, you know, your life is kind of a process of discovery creatively, and it gives you a little time to develop before you get slammed into a more rigorous business model of filmmaking, which really can change the equation. You have a lot more opportunities, but in a lot of ways, you take less risks sometimes too. I mean, sometimes, and also you become part of a larger system in a much more integrated way, and that means that a lot of your time is spent motivating yourself towards projects that require more money and more time to set up and more financial risk for the people involved. And so it's really about trying to balance your creative desires and the necessity of the business in order to continue making interesting work. And that's always the trick. It's tricky.
What was the path from documentary to narrative to fiction something that you intended upon, or just that naturally happened?
Well, when I left college, I thought I was going to be a fiction filmmaker. My thesis film was a fictional film, and it was actually it was a script based on around the Darkon game. So it was about live action. Well, I actually became familiar with them. I knew what the activity was, but then I became familiar with them by going down to research, for the script, to do research for the script. And when I got down there, I met a lot of people, including Skip, and I was really taken with the world. And, I was 23 years old, and I didn't have any way of making a fiction film, really. I don't even think I had a very good developed idea of a fiction film I wanted to make. I had a lot of concepts that I wanted to work with, and a lot of those were alive in Darkon. So, I thought, well, shit, I'm just going to go and start shooting this because it's interesting. And, that became the movie. And I teamed up with the guys in my company, and we went off and made it. And it's funny. I think I fell into documentaries for a while, and I fell in love with them too. I made three more straight documentaries, and then another experimental film after that.
Right. With,
Michelle there. And I'm sorry. And now is the point in my creative life that I think I felt exhausted by documentaries. I think I wanted to go back and find out what it was like to make a fiction film. And I think I also felt like, well, if I don't really start motivating my energy and my career towards trying to make a fictional film, I may, it takes a long time for these things to set up and to gestate and to get proper financing and all that stuff. So then I really put my mind to it, and I stepped away from documentaries. I've produced some stuff since then, but I have not been, full time in the field the way I was, on the previous projects.
So is that something you plan on stepping away from? I mean, for the foreseeable future?
I don't like. I think his career is a great model.
You want to get that comparison?
Yeah, no, his career is a great model. I think keeping one foot in documentary can keep you grounded creatively in a certain kind of way that I like. I'm always kind of turning docs over in my head, and so it's kind of it's always present in my mind. And actually, I have to say, I really miss holding a camera and being next to my DP out in the field in the real world. I mean, it's an incredibly exhilarating experience to shoot documentary work, and I would hope to do more of it, you have to make space when you're, I'm working on a number of things right now. I'm pitching one TV show. I'm finishing another script with my writing partner. That we're doing for James Franco. I've just handed in a TV pilot that's based on my previous film, King Kelly, and that I'm developing with FX. We'll see how that goes. That's a lot of stuff. I always try to keep a lot of lines in the water because it helps me psychologically to have a lot of things happening at once, because so many things in this business don't work out and don't come together, that it helps to have a number of projects that you're attached to. And I don't mean attached to like in the business sense. I mean mentally and emotionally attached to, so that when one fades or falls apart or is brutally murdered, you have another place you can go in your mind to stay engaged and to not get really discouraged about it, because it can be hard. I mean, it's not an easy life.
No, and that's I'm a freelancer. That's a similar thing. You start to go, I need to take on as much as possible, even if it's a little too much, because you can be assured that like 30% of these things are going to fall off, and then you're left at a more even baseline in terms of your mental.
Yeah, I mean,
the very real financial.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really exciting.
That's cool to hear.
Exciting stuff, and it's a pivotal point in any filmmaker's career. The moment at which you really encounter the larger, the more ferocious part of the business. And when I say ferocious, I mean energetic.
Mm.
No, not malicious. Just
sure.
The larger scale projects start coming your way, and you have higher stakes. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, the stakes are higher. You have further to fall. And when you have further to fall, sometimes you struggle with how many safety lines you want to tie onto yourself. So I think about it a lot. I think about it every day. As I balance all the different things that I'm trying to do, and some of the offers or opportunities that come my way. It's a job to figure that out. And of course, I feel very lucky to be where I am. I mean, I think a lot of people hope to have the kind of opportunities that I have, and I'm thankful for that. But you're always fighting a war inside your head too, as you try to balance all of your creative needs and your creative expectations. I mean, so I think so much of a filmmaker's life and anyone in the arts, their life is often defined by a really intense internal argument about what you're making, why you're making it, if it's good. And I think in the film business, that is magnified by the nature of the financial realities that it takes to make a film. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really hard thing that all American directors struggle with. How much do you fit in? How far into the system do you go? And at what point can you maintain your own integrity and your own sense of what you like and what is good, and yet also get things made and be smart, and take opportunities that will that will help you make more films and be interesting for you. You know, it's tricky. It's really tricky.
Yeah. Well, that kind of mindset, I think, it embodies in some people's perspective on the one for them, one for me kind of idea for directors' films or something like that, to be able to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think one thing today that a lot of filmmakers are unrealistic about the fact that artists have always had to do that.
And it helps.
There's this kind of mythology that, you know, oh, these creative geniuses were just working in a vacuum, and Beethoven or Mozart or Boccherini or, you know, I think often in history, great artists, not that I'm calling myself a great artist, just like, you know, artists that are very well known had to deal with similar forces in their life. I mean, I think if you are a painter, as long as you can afford canvas and paint and a roof to put it under, you can go into that room and that space and make something by yourself without a lot of other people. And in film, that's not the case. Mm-hmm. So that makes every single film an experiment and a risky experiment. I mean, I think if you took most directors from you know, the silver screen era, and you asked them to do what your average indie director is asked to do on a given day, they would think you're fucking insane. They would say there's absolutely no way this is gonna. Technology aside, just the amount of time that you're getting to make this stuff is it's very restrictive. You know, so yeah, it's hard all the way around, man. It's a very challenging, competitive experience, and it's very exciting as well. But, you know, as you grow, as you get a little older, you have to find ways of coping with all these forces, even personally, just as a human being, just getting through the day. You know, you have to figure out ways to insulate your internal world from all of the insanity that surrounds you when it comes to trying to make these movies.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that, and I if you feel like you were wanting more, I'm sorry. There were mistakes. This is why I feel like I don't really ever understand what I'm doing, because technical issues fuck shit up beyond belief. And that's something that kind of got cut out. We talked about how it's insane that films even get made in the first place. You know, there's so many moving parts and things that could go wrong, and somehow it creates a cohesive product. So that's something you miss, unfortunately. But, you know, hopefully we'll have him back. We can talk about that stuff. In the meantime, we don't know who's coming up next. I got a couple more episodes in the works, and hopefully I can figure out what caused this issue so it doesn't cause it ever again. And we can have those people on. But, you know, this show has kind of gone into an irregular scheduling phase, and that's fine. So we'll see you when we do it. In the meantime, you can keep up on Facebook, Butterfly Effect Podcast, YouTube, Butterfly Effect Podcast, Twitter, Butterfly Pod. I'm on Twitter at Edeltodd, ETTLETODD, and email me at trettleman@gmail.com, trettleman@gmail.com. That's for feedback, you know, people you want to see in the show, what have you. And butterflyeffectpod.com is the home of the site. The home of the site, yeah. The home of the podcast, the site. And it's on Spreaker. That's where everything's hosted. You know, just go in there, search Butterfly Effect, and you'll find it. Oh, all right. Well, I'm gonna go, you know, deal with existential dread and try to piece together what I'm gonna do with my life. I'll see you later.